Five TCU Horned Frogs made Dave Campbell's All-Texas College football team. I'll tell you why one of those is very encouraging for TCU's hopes this upcoming season.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We are brought to you today by FanDuel, MLB, and summer sports in full swing. You can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's a deal for new customers at FanDuel.com or if you download the FanDuel app on your phone. TCU baseball, they landed a reliever in the transfer portal who has really good numbers from Cal Poly, a potential closer candidate for this upcoming season. 2026 TCU football quarterback commit Jack Dalton and the Woodlands. They won the 7-on-7 state tournament at the Division I level. I'll talk to you about that in segment 2. But we start today with some exciting news on the football front. Dave Campbell's Texas Football released their all Texas teams today. So these are college football players in the state of Texas, first and second team offense, first and second team defense. 5 TCU players made it on these teams. Josh Hoover was not one of those. I will get to that later on, but the guys that made it: Devin Deal, first team defense; Eric McAllister, second team offense at wide receiver; Colton Deary, second team offense on the offensive line; Namdil Bizor, second team defense; Bud Clark, second team defense. So a few things. These are preseason accolades, right? What do they mean? Well, it's just projections like anything else this time of year. But a few things about this that give me hope and encourage me. The main theme I want to focus on: how do they come up with these lists? Mike Craven, who, to his credit, has been one of the few voices in the college football media that has been like, hey, TCU should get more hype as a potential dark horse in the Big 12. We're talking a lot about Arizona State. We're talking a lot about Texas Tech, Baylor, BYU. We were talking about until yesterday. Jake Retzlaff leaves the team, so now that suddenly is in flux. But TCU projected to be middle of the pack by most national media members, and I think this is a team that should be playing in Arlington at the Big 12 championship game. So Mike and his team at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, how did they put this list together? Well, obviously part of it is just what they know and who they know around the sports landscape, but also they're going to coaches and they're talking to coaches individually and trying to get a read based on spring practices, based on these coaches' impressions through summer workouts. Who are the key players on their teams? So we've got 3 of the 5 that are on defense. Devin Deal at that edge rusher, that stud linebacker spot. He's going to have a big year. I'm not worried about him. Honestly, the question for me at stud linebacker, and that's that stand-up edge rusher that Andy Avalos has in his defense, is who steps up behind Devin Deal. Because last year, when Cooper McDonald was healthy, they had a pretty good 1-2 punch. This season, Jonathan Bax, that's a guy we've talked about a lot on this show through the years, a ton of potential. He really fits from a physical standpoint. He's got the type of frame, stature, explosiveness that would totally make sense to be an effective player at that spot in this defense. We saw some good signs at the end of last year, but now he has to take that next step this upcoming season. Past that, I mean, is it a true freshman? Chad Woodfork. Again, you look at him, Chad Woodfork is like a ready-made, this is an edge rusher. He's still a true freshman, though. There are going to be some growing pains. John Schobel, who played inside linebacker at Columbus, where he won a state title with his cousin Adam, who was also on TCU's roster as a quarterback. They like what he has done in spring practice as an early enrollee. But again, true freshman, asking a lot of him if he's going to be an impact player. But Devin Deal, I think, is set up to have an outstanding season. Transfer from Tulane, Marcus Deal's brother. really came on towards the end of the year. You think about those games against Utah, he was dominant in that ball game. The bowl game, the Mexico Bowl, he was really good against Louisiana in that one. Late in the season, felt like he found his consistency and he was getting to the quarterback each and every week. But 3 players on defense. Bud Clark, we know the story there, a ton of experience. They got him back for one more season. A ball hawk back there at safety. Take some risk. We'll give up some big plays. But that's another dude, even though he's a veteran player, in that Arizona game, right? In that Utah game, like later on in the season, you started to see the confidence flash. You started to see Bud at his best. And at his best, he's that dude that steps in front of the ball against Michigan and takes J.J. McCarthy's pass to the house. He's got that type of playmaking ability. It's just about limiting those big plays behind him at times when he takes those risks and him hitting on those risks more often. He understands this defense. He knows how to play college football. I think Bud set it for a big season. Nnamdi coming back for another year. It was a struggle at times last year, but I understand why they're bullish on him because he's got so much experience. He brings that physicality to the table. He's a guy that can get downhill and make plays. Big time potential for him. The 2 players on offense, Eric McAllister, I think quietly underrated as someone who's coming back at wide receiver. It's honestly crazy. We talk about the 3 guys that left, and deservedly so. I mean, Savion Williams, Jack Bech, they get drafted. J.P. Richardson had an outstanding college career. He's getting a chance with the Bears right now in their camp, or will get a chance in training camp coming up in August. But Eric McAllister, despite missing the first few games of the season and not having consistent playing time, he still went for over 700 yards receiving. He's big. He's physical. He can stretch the field. Having McAllister and Dwyer on either side of each other is going to create some serious mismatches for opposing defenses. And it's just about Josh Hoover identifying that, making plays. Kendall Browse making the effort to get McAllister the ball over and over and over again. And last season, getting the ball in space. I mean, you saw it in that game against Kansas. Catches the ball along the sidelines, makes a couple guys miss, takes it to the house. He's got that type of ability, whether it's on an out route, a stop route, just by using that large frame he has to box defenders out. And then he's a tough dude to tackle on first contact. He's not built like Savion. Like, he's tall. He's not as physically built as Savion, but similar in the fact that he's just a dude that's tough to bring down to the ground. But maybe the most encouraging thing about this list, Colton Deary making it as a second-team offensive lineman. Why is that a big deal? Well, he's making that move to center. And I think what this shows is the coaching staff really believes in him. Because obviously the people that made this list, they looked at it. They had the opportunity to assess it and say, hey, this is where we want to go. But I feel like input from the coaches was a big part of it too. And I believe it shows that Sonny Dykes, AJ Ricker, they think this is going to be a pretty seamless transition. And I know Deary played center in the past, so maybe I shouldn't make such a big deal out of it. But it's a critical part of the offense. You have to call out all the signals. You have to call out the protections. It's a huge part of what you're going to do on a weekly basis. And so to have that steady presence there with a guy that they trust and they know can do the job, that's a big deal. The physicality that he brings to the table is impressive. And with Deary, with Cade Bennett coming back from an injury, and then whether it ends up being Remington Strickland or Carson Bruno, that interior offensive line is setting up to be pretty salty. And that's like, if you're going to have an effective running game, you have to be good between the tackles. You have to be able to get that push. I think they're ready for that. Even with James Brockermeyer leaving, which I feel like was probably a bigger loss than people want to admit. But it is really fortunate that TCU has a guy who's played the center position before, who can just slide over and do a good job, and they don't have to replace, they don't have to shuffle around 2 or 3 guys, make wholesale changes on the offensive line to make this work. When we come back, Josh Hoover did not make this list. It's crazy. We'll talk about it next year on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. First, I do want to mention our friends at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Major League Baseball games every night of the week. Plenty of opportunities to get involved at FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel app. They've got live in-game betting. You can do same-game parlays. They've got future bets. I've told you before, North Carolina 1.5-point favorites against the Frogs right now. TCU's going to cover. TCU's going to win that game. 6.5, the over-under for wins for TCU football. It better be over. If not, we're probably talking about a new coach coming in next season. A lot of things happening at FanDuel.com. Plenty of opportunities. If you're a new customer, FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app, you win your first $5 bet, $150 in bonus bets coming your way. Give FanDuel a try today. FanDuel, official betting partner of Major League Baseball and a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. A few more things before we move on to a TCU commit who's a state champion in the 7-on-7 world. But Josh Hoover did not make this all-Texas college football team, the first team or the second team on offense. Your first team quarterback was Arch Manning. Your second team quarterback was Sawyer Robertson. I'm kind of just at the point with these things where it's going to play out on the field. Like, it's hard for me to get up the energy to be really incensed about it. I do think it's funny that people have just kind of decided Sawyer Robertson is better or should be better than Josh Hoover based on half of the season that he played. And listen, I get that Baylor was much improved in the second half of the year. Dave Aranda was on the hot seat. I mean, really similar story to TCU. Midway through the season, a lot of questions about potentially changing up this coaching staff. What does the future look like? And then they make a move because DeQuan Finn goes down with an injury and things stabilize. And ultimately, yeah, they beat TCU at home by a field goal. That was a very competitive game. I mean, Frogs were in it from start to finish. I don't feel like there's much separation at all, but I just believe Josh is a better quarterback. He put together an entire season of solid work. Now, the turnovers were a problem through the first half of last year. He corrected that. He got it figured out. Bryson Washington, who was the first team running back at Baylor, I think he and that offensive line were a bigger part of their turnaround than Sawyer Robertson was, but sort of splitting hairs there. And then also, like, I understand the hype around Arch Manning. I get that he was the best prospect in a long time. When he's been on the field, he's been very good. Texas is incredibly talented. They've got dudes all over the place, so they're set up for success. But it is worth noting, this will be his first full season as a starter. And so it's not crazy to think that there's going to be some ups and downs there. Now, good chance that things stabilize and they're in the mix again for an SEC title game appearance. In that case, they're probably looking at a playoff berth. But, I mean, it's going to solve itself. I am perplexed that Josh is not getting more attention, more hype going into the season. But I've said this in other podcasts and other opportunities this offseason. So much of this just comes down to TCU hasn't been in the spotlight much since that loss to Colorado in the season opener a couple years back. The good news is they've got some opportunities. All eyes are going to be on TCU and North Carolina in that Monday night game. Now, sure, a lot of it's going to be people tuning in to watch Bill Belichick and his debut as a college football coach, but people will still be watching TCU a few weeks later when they play SMU, a team that was in the playoffs, right? Chances against Colorado, chances against BYU. There are marquee games, especially if this team is in conference title contention in November and December, And there will be plenty of opportunities for Josh Hoover and others to get their name out there. It's just about winning those games so that they do mean more as the season progresses. Big 12 Media Days. TCU is going to speak to the media on Wednesday, July 9th. So about 8 days away now. Your Media Day representatives, Josh Hoover, Bud Clark, Eric McAllister, Nnamdi Obaizor, Colton Deary, and Devin Deal. So essentially, all these guys that were part of that All-Texas team list, minus Josh Hoover, was left off. Those will be your representatives coming up on media days. I'm intrigued to hear from Colton Deary because the offensive line is such a key part of whether or not this team is going to reach their ceiling this upcoming year. And then it'll also be fun to hear from these defensive guys because Andy Avalos in year 2, right? What does that look like? What improvements have they made beyond just, surface level? Yeah. Moving quicker, reacting better, playing with instincts, because you just have a more in-depth understanding of what the scheme is, what you're going to do day to day, how you're going to attack different formations, how you're going to attack different sets. I get all that. But beyond just that, what is it that TCU has identified in areas where they've grown? Like, how are they going to stop the run better this year? There's multiple parts to that answer, and maybe it's complex, but I'd like to hear just in basic terms, what can they do to improve and get to a point where teams aren't running for 6-7 yards a pop on them? Because that cost them the UCF game. In some ways it cost them the Houston game against Baylor once they had some injuries along the interior defensive line. They really struggled to slow down that running attack, and it made a huge difference. If you just get that fixed, you're talking about a team that has more chances to win, even with the schedule being tougher this year. But we'll hear from them in about 8 days when Big 12 Media Days at the Star in Frisco commences. Day 2, TCU sending 6 players up there. I wanted to talk about this. Jack Dalton is TCU's quarterback commit for 2026 from the Woodlands, coming off a big season. And they won the state 7-on-7 championship at the Division I level. So the biggest school level that's available there. The Woodlands came away with the title. They defeated South Oak Cliff, which is a team that's been in the 5A state title game multiple years in a row, 27-7. Man, how about the defense from the Woodlands in the state title game in 7-on-7, holding the Golden Bears to 7 points? But Dalton threw for 4 touchdown passes, and he was outstanding through pool play and the championship bracket, brought home the title. Why is this significant? Well, first off, Texas, there is nothing better than Texas high school football. The quality of play, the depth across the state. Yes, I know you've got those charter schools out in Vegas and California and IMG in Florida, and they'll come and play Duncanville or whoever, and they'll win those games. I'm talking about 1A to 6A, the coaching, the training, the players, nobody's better. Jack Dalton led his team to a state title at the highest level in 7-on-7. I also think it's good news because of this. Dalton's a true dual threat guy, and he did a lot of his damage last year with his legs on the run, whether it was design runs, scramble drills, making things happen down the field. He was really good in those moments. Now you're talking about a situation in 7-on-7 where, he had to be locked in. Like, he was in the pocket, making throws in tight windows, in the red zone at times, and he got the job done. So if he can do that well, along with what he brings to the table as somebody who can run, that's a huge plus for TCU. Timeline is going to play a huge factor here as far as looking at where TCU is going to be quarterback room wise in the future. Do we just get one more year of Josh Hoover? Do we get 2? And then Adam Schobel will be next in line after that. But Jack Dalton, he really seems to fit what Kendall Briles wants to do. I know he's a 3-star prospect right now. I'm not really super worried about it. I mean, I think it's a good evaluation. I think TCU's in a good spot with him. And you can see with what he did at the state 7-on-7 tournament, this is a guy that can compete at the highest level. Is not going to shy away from anything. Is going to get the job done. So kudos to the Woodlands for bringing home that state championship. When we come back, TCU baseball adds a big arm in the portal. That's coming up next around Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Cal Poly reliever Tanner Sagoose commits to TCU. He's had 15 saves over the past 2 years. Last season posted a 3.60 ERA, 3-2 record, and over 40 innings of work. Struck out 50 and had 6 saves. Opposing batters bat .212 against him, and he only allowed 2 earned runs across his first 14 appearances of the season. Those numbers and accolades coming courtesy of Jamie Plunkett from 247 Sports. Cal Poly is a good program. I mean, obviously a mid-major, but they've been really effective in baseball. West Coast, always talking about good teams. The biggest part of this to me, last season was so up and down. And yeah, a large part of that was they just struggled to score consistently, right? So that was part of it. Also, starting rotation, Ben Abelt goes down with an injury before the season starts. Tommy Lepore has to step up and be your number one dude. He does that, but then the guys behind him never really materialize. I mean, they went through an entire year without truly having a Saturday and Sunday starter. As wild as that sounds, it's the truth. So those challenges alone present some roadblocks for you. But another thing that really held TCU back last year, they didn't have clear and defined roles in the bullpen. It was, I mean, each and every night, it was kind of, I hope this works, right? Now, Braden Sloan was a dude who could go multiple innings and could carry you from the 5th to the 9th. So that was nice. But they didn't have a closer last season. I mean, there wasn't it was just kind of night to night, week to week, who had the hot hand, who was throwing well, and that guy would get the opportunity. But there wasn't a pitcher on that roster that if it's 4-3 going in the bottom of the 9th, you're like, okay, it's his inning. This is the guy that comes in and shuts things down for us. That player didn't exist for TCU last year. And that makes it really tough on your manager when you don't have that order in the back of your mind. I mean, it's going to change week to week based on availability. But to not have any semblance of that throughout the majority of the season, well, that's a very difficult thing for a manager to navigate. So Tanner Sagoose, I mean, he's doesn't have he's not throwing 98. This is not a true power arm. Low 90s fastball, but he's also got a curve and a good slider. So he's got a mix there. He can throw some different things at you. But he has saves across 2 seasons, had 6 saves last year. If he can emerge as a back end of the bullpen arm, if he's a closer, that's great. But even if he turns into, 8th inning guy who can be effective in that role, that's going to be a huge part of TCU baseball taking the step forward. You just need to know night to night, okay, we get to the 7th, these are the guys we got. We get to the 8th, this is who we're rolling out with. We get to the, save situation, here's our closer. That's going to make this team so much better. So we'll see what else they add. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, Noah Franco in the middle of the lineup. That's a good start. You got Tommy Lepore coming back. We'll see what happens with Ben Abelt. I don't know if he'll go pro or if he'll stick around for one more season following the injury. But if you get depth in that pitching staff and more defined roles in the bullpen, then this team starts to take shape as a true contender. And I'm already seeing some way too early Omaha projections that have TCU there. They got to earn it. It's been a few years now. Last 2 seasons, you missed the postseason once. You make it this year, but you get bounced really quickly. That's not great. A chance to start to put that to rest, though, if you can build this team the right way this offseason. That's going to be the key for Kirk Sarloos and company. We'll be back tomorrow. It's a Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.